Council. Carr. Amy Ginsburg. Kate Stewart. Troy Murtha. And John Zittrauer. Our moderator tonight is Josh Krutz, founding editor of Maryland Matters. Our co-sponsors this evening for this event are the Coalition of Asian Pacific Democrats of America, District 14 Democratic Club, District 16 Democratic Club, District 20 Democratic Caucus, District 20 Breakfast Club, Rockville Mid-County Democratic Breakfast Club, Association of Black Democrats of Montgomery County, Montgomery County Young Democrats, and the Women's Democratic Club of Montgomery County. Let's give our guests and John Krutz a warm welcome. We will begin with a 2-minute introduction from each candidate. The timer, Mark Order, will be doing the timing. He'll give you a 30-second yellow warning and a red when your time is up. If you go past the red, maybe we'll smack you on the wrist. I don't know. But anyhow, thank all the candidates and Josh Krutz for moderating this forum. Josh Krutz.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I almost feel like everyone should come closer. We're an intimate family gathering here, so, but no, it's fine. So stay wherever you want. So a couple of housekeeping things. As you see, we're sharing mics here. Mr. Murtha and I will be sharing a mic, and these two will be sharing a mic, and we'll be sharing a mic. So bear with us there. And I think, is somebody collecting questions from the audience for, So if you have a question, this gentleman in red will, I think there are file cards or index cards or something going around. So we'll have some questions. Oh yeah. Okay. All right, so we'll do that, and then as you heard, 2-minute opening statements, 1 minute for questions to answer questions. If another candidate mentions your name, you'll get 30 seconds to respond. And but we'll be flexible and we'll play it by ear here. So, but we'll start with opening statements, and let's start alphabetically. So we'll just start with Delegate Carr and move on down. So Delegate Carr.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me now? Oh, that's much better. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank the organizers of the event, all of the Democratic clubs, and the great work that you do, all of the attendees who are here with us, and people coming in virtually as well. Thanks to Josh and to my fellow candidates. My name is Al Carr. I am a 25-year Montgomery County resident. I live in Kensington with my wife, a former preschool teacher, works for a nonprofit that helps kids in foster care. I have 3 boys who have gone through Montgomery County Public Schools or are still in Montgomery County Public Schools. I am a state delegate for 15 years, serving in the 18th legislative district. Before that, I was in municipal government, town of Kensington, for 5 years. As a delegate, I have successfully championed to passage many bills that I wrote into law. And I have a reputation of being accessible and providing great constituent service. Before I was in government, I had 20 years in the private sector, working in the telecommunications field. My degree is in electrical engineering. I just launched a new website, www.alcar.org. It's the same URL, but I finally have a professional site after about 16 years in office. So I'm excited about that, and I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight.
I'm better standing. I'm Amy Ginsburg, and thank you all for coming out here tonight. It shows you really do care about your community. I've lived in Montgomery County for my whole life, in District 4 actually, and I've been lucky enough to have a 40-year career in the nonprofit sector. When I was the executive director of Manna Food Center, I helped 2,000 families put food on the table every month. When I was the director of Neediest Kids, we helped students all across the DMV get the essentials they need so they can succeed in school. When I worked for the Visiting Nurse Association, I brought the very first immunization program to grocery stores. And this was back in the 90s when no one got shots at grocery stores. Of course, we all do now. And now I'm the executive director of Friends of White Flint. And Friends of White Flint brings together property owners, businesses, and residents. And we're all working together to transform our community into a walkable, transit-oriented neighborhood. And that's one of the lessons I've learned from 4 decades in the nonprofit world. When you bring everyone together, nonprofits, government, businesses, residents, faith-based communities, schools, and you put them all together, you can actually get stuff done. And we need to get stuff done. There are 14,000 jobs that should be here in Montgomery County that went elsewhere in the DMV. We have a housing crisis, and I'm running so that our graduates can come back to Montgomery County, find a home they can afford, a job they can walk to, and a community that they love. And I'm running to bring progressive values, a strong economy, and pragmatic leadership so that we can get things done.
Can everyone hear me? Great. Good evening. I'm Troy Murtha. Most of you know why I'm here. I've been a county resident my entire life. This electoral process is all new to me. But this is my home, and I want nothing more than to see the county prosper. It was a privilege to grow up here. Montgomery County is a great place to live, to learn, to recreate, and to raise a family. My parents came here because it was a place of opportunity, a place where, even on a government salary, my parents could afford a home, a place where my mother, when she returned to work, could find a job, a place where 4 kids could trust that they would get a great education, regardless of the means of their parents, and where everyone could rest assured, feel safe, and know that their hard work had value. I believe Montgomery County is still a place of opportunity, but I'm concerned about the path we've taken for the last 10 years. The county has lost jobs, is harder and harder to find a home, violent crime is skyrocketing, and our schools are facing new challenges. But I look around and see people like yourselves, good, involved citizens who care. I feel pretty optimistic. If the county empowers its people, it can overcome any obstacle. I'm running because I love this county and I want to see it continue to thrive. I look forward to a productive dialogue with my colleagues and to hearing from you. Thank you.
Okay. Great, thank you. Thank you everyone for coming this evening. My name is Kate Stewart and I've lived in Montgomery County over 2 decades. I've raised 2 children here who have gone through the Montgomery County Public Schools and are now in college. In 2015, the voters in Tacoma Park selected me as their mayor and I'm serving my 3rd term. I also serve on the Montgomery Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments Board as its vice chair. I was selected as the vice chair by my colleagues in over 24 jurisdictions in the DMV. Working regionally in the city of Tacoma Park, I've worked on housing, affordability, climate change, transportation issues, economic development, and racial equity. Particularly on racial equity, working with my colleagues in the city of Tacoma Park, we were the first jurisdiction in Maryland to actually move forward on an initiative on that. Because of our work in Tacoma Park, I was selected by the National League of Cities to co-chair the Racial Equity and Leadership Council, where I got to work with elected officials all around the country to put in place racial equity initiatives so that we can build stronger communities around the country. In my other life, I've owned a small business, and I was also the executive vice president of Advocates for Youth, an organization that worked with young people on social justice issues, and particularly on reproductive and sexual health and rights. As I look at the county now, we have so many challenges and opportunities before us, and many of the things that I've worked on, both locally, regionally, and nationally, are the things we need to work on in our county. And I want to bring my experience, dedication, and knowledge to work for the residents of District 4. Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Zittrauer. I have lived in the county for over a decade. I am a hospitality industry professional, bartender by trade, and I am here to provide a voice for the have-nots, for the people who struggle to pay rent, for the people who struggle with the cost of living in this county. I had to sit at home for 2.5 months when COVID hit. And I saw a lot of my friends and coworkers wondering when their unemployment checks were going to show up, how they were going to afford to live here, because rent was still due. And so I am here to provide a voice for people who struggle like that. I look around the county and I see an amazing community that I've been honored to be a part of. And I see a lot of people who seem to get ignored. Starting with our homeless population, I firmly believe that as a county, we are too affluent to have a homeless issue. And I want to represent the people that feel they have no voice, people who are undergoing mental health or addiction struggles. I want to bring my experience in a lot of these lives that I've actually lived to the table and provide a new perspective in our local government. Thank you.
Thanks, candidates. So I think we've heard, already some of the challenges and some of the opportunities. And I'll ask a bunch of issue questions in a minute. I actually wanted to start with just a very quick yes or no question, and maybe we can start with Mr. Zitrower and move this way this time. And I think it would be useful for the audience to know which among you is participating in the public financing program. Are you, Mr. Zitrower?
Yes.
Okay, Mayor Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Murtha?
A little behind on paperwork, but yes.
Okay, Ms. Ginsburg? And Delegate Carr?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, since we're we're basically abutting the Beltway for here, it seemed appropriate to start with the Beltway question. And then I'll ask a follow-up transportation, sort of broader, more general transportation question. And I guess we'll start with Mayor Stewart, come down this way, and then go to Mr. Zitrower. Governor Hogan's proposal to widen parts of the Beltway and I-270 is undergoing the review process before several state and federal agencies right now. What's your opinion of the plan in general, and what should the posture of the county government be toward the governor's proposal? Mayor Stewart.
Thank you. I do not support the governor's proposal, and I think the county should strongly reject it and work to make sure it does not move forward.
Thank you. Cars are the way of the past. We still need them. We still need to get around. But this type of infrastructure project is not what we need. We need to invest in light rail, buses, trains, other forms of transportation. Building more lanes just induces more demand. It's going to put more cars on the road. Traffic's going to persist, and there won't be any long-term change. Thank you.
I think this process was completely flawed, and we asked the wrong questions. We asked, how do we build toll lanes? When the question we should have been asking is, how do we get people out of their cars and moving up and down 270? And that answer very well may have been reversible lanes, HOV lanes, transit lanes. There were lots of other solutions to the problem that we didn't examine, and we should be examining those solutions.
So I'm opposed to the governor's proposal. First of all, if there is a need to widen the Beltway, I don't think that a P3 is the right model. I think that the appropriate model would be to fund it with federal dollars, maybe for the bridge, for the segment leading from the bridge to 270, or just do a traditional toll road. We have a toll roads agency who could finance something like that. But second of all, the project is not justified. So very opposed to widening around the top of the Beltway and up 270. I'd prefer to have that stay within the footprint. I like the idea of reversible lanes on 270. I'm much more in favor of investing in transit, make commuter rail work better, enhance our bus service, bike and pedestrian investments. I think the county needs to do a better job of getting on the same page between the county council and the delegation. What we saw recently is the county council on a Tuesday had a press release that 5 county council members had decided that they had made a deal to support this project with the Secretary of Transportation. That same day, there was a.
Okay. Mr. Zittrauer.
Staunch opposition, and I believe the county should maintain staunch opposition to the plan. We're just now getting people back into offices and figuring out what the commute is going to look like on a lot of these roads. So it's premature to say that we need anything like this, but if we instead will invest in reliable public transportation, you will see ridership go up, and you won't have as much of a need for a lot of cars on the road in the first place.
Thank you. I wanted to just add, I would like to ask you, each of you, to kind of expound a little bit more on transportation. I mean, you've all talked about transit and plans for reducing traffic congestion and commute times, but I mean, how do you make it happen? What are funding mechanisms? I mean, just like to hear your views some more about that, and we can start with Mr. Murtha.
Sure. So it's a broad question, and it's hard to answer without being a little more specific. We need to partner with federal, state, and other counties to get these types of projects done. Obviously, we can raise some of the funds locally, but infrastructure is designed to connect us, and we need to partner with where we're being connected to. So, I want to see lots of types of infrastructure, and the funding models might differ depending on what type of infrastructure we're building. Thank you.
I'm a firm believer in multimodal transit, but we have to actually build it. We have spent so much of our time and our tax dollars studying multimodal transit, but we never actually get around to building it. I think BRT is a great example. Once again, we asked the wrong questions. We asked, how do we build BRT throughout Montgomery County? When the real question should have been, how do we get people out of their cars and moving up and down our corridors? Now, maybe BRT was the answer, but maybe it was separated bike lanes. Maybe it was express bus service that comes every 5 minutes. Maybe it was a monorail or broad sidewalks. There were lots of other options that we never looked at. So I think we need to fund multimodal transit, but we actually need to build it, and we need to build it now, not keep studying and studying and then studying some more.
Thanks. Yeah, what I started to say before was the county needs to get on the same page. We had on a Tuesday, 5 county council members announcing in a press release they had cut a deal with the transportation secretary. Well, there was a county council meeting that same day, earlier in the day, and it was not on the agenda. So you had this group of county council members that cut out the public, they cut out the delegation, and they undercut the county executive. I would not do that as your council member. So I think we have this unique opportunity to leverage federal funds right now, and also we got a lot of state funds out of the delegation. This year, there are some models in Northern Virginia to fund transit locally as well. Thank you.
Just quickly, just got a text from someone watching at home and asked the candidates stand when they speak, because can't see them, I guess. So, Mr. Zittrauer.
Please hold the microphone next to your mouth.
I'm sorry?
Hold it close to your mouth.
Okay.
We can't hear you.
All right. So I am a metro rider, I am a bus rider, and I believe in public transit, especially when it's reliable and shows up frequently. That is, I mean, the central theme of my platform on transportation is fund more public transit, fund better public transit. I think the ride-on being free is a great idea. I would love to see that expanded. There are people in my line of work, they get out of work a lot of times after the metro is closed. So they need a reliable bus system to get them to and from work, or we are going to see more cars on the street. And that's not what we want.
Great, thanks. I don't think we'll see much difference on this question for many of us. Strong supporter of BRT, and I think we need dedicated lanes for it. Also expanding Mark Rail, Delegate Solomon passed a great bill this session on that. So I'm very hopeful we'll see more action on Mark Rails as well. The other thing we need to work on is connectivity and the last mile. The problem is lots of times we have public transportation that does not connect to other public transportation or does not connect to where people live or where they need to go, whether that's work, doctor's office, or somewhere else. So we need to work on that and how to get people to there. On funding, I see our D20 delegation in the back of the room. Thank you very much for the $10 million in state funding for BRT at the other end of our district. And we also have capital improvement grants, SIG grants from the federal government that should hopefully be increased under the Biden administration. So I think we have to work hard as a county to look for those grants. Thank you.
I'm going to ask a planning question next, and it'll be followed by a housing question. So you probably, a lot of the audience is probably familiar with the Thrive 2050. And it looks like the next county council is going to have an opportunity to adopt Thrive 2050, which is the first general plan for Montgomery County in 30 years. And it's, you know, it's a framework. It's been described as a framework for responding to economic, demographic, social, and environmental change, and to kind of chart a development course for the future of the county. So I guess I'd ask each of you if you've had a chance to take a look and your assessment, and how do you view these sort of, you know, planning and development debates kind of broadly speaking. And I guess we start with you, Ms. Ginsburg.
So Thrive 2050 has made a lot of people nervous. And I understand that, because this is your house. It's the place you work 2 jobs to pay the mortgage. It's where your kids learn to ride a bicycle. So I understand the fear, but I also firmly believe that we need to build more housing, and we need more types of housing. If we build duplexes that look just like single family homes, I don't think neighborhoods are going to be ruined. I think they're going to be enhanced, as long as we keep the infrastructure going that we need to support all of these extra houses. I have a lot of friends, they're empty nesters. They would love to leave their house, but there's nowhere for them to go, and they want to stay in their neighborhood. A duplex enables them to sneak right in, stay in their neighborhood, and it enables our kids, when they graduate, to find a home they can afford in a great neighborhood. So I think Thrive 2050 can really do great things once we get past the emotions past it.
So yeah, so Thrive 2050 is the general plan, and we don't have a choice. We have to update our general plan. That's required by state law. And I think, you know, Thrive 2050 is a start. It needs work. I think we should not rush it. We should get it right. I think that some people were sort of made to feel that they tried to participate, but they were shut out. And that's kind of a recipe for disaster when you operate like that. So, you know, we need to incorporate, you know, some additional things into it. If you look at the plans passed by neighboring jurisdictions, it is missing some components. So I think, and I think in general as a county, especially on land use matters, we do need to do a better job of getting public input. We have a lot of smart people in our county who would like to participate and can participate. They don't always know how. I think with better outreach, we can do a better job of getting that public input.
Yes, full support of Thrive 2050. I am full support of different types of housing. I am an MPDU renter, and without that program, there's no chance of me being able to afford living in this county. I would like to see that expanded. I would also like to see an expansion of public or social housing for people who are unable to work or pay rent. They still deserve a place to live. And I believe Thrive is a start on something like that, of being able to find housing for everybody, regardless of income, regardless of ability to work. Housing, I believe, is a human right, and a human right should not have a cost barrier to it.
Great. So Thrive is a visionary document that we've all been talking about for the last little while, and I do agree with the principles of it. Basically, I see our housing crisis as twofold here in the county. One, we have a supply issue. We have to build more housing for people to live in, and that means we need to get rid of exclusionary zoning so that we can have more housing in our county. The second thing is we need to make sure people are not displaced. Right now, if we look at the areas around the purple line, 47% of the people who live in those areas are already house burdened. That means they spend over 30% of their household income on their housing. With the purple line coming in, there is a great chance of displacement. So we need to build housing, and we need to make sure people are not displaced and put in place policies so people can have stable homes in our community.
Yeah, so I like Thrive 2050. I think it's a step in the right direction for the county. Everyone on this stage has said this, but we need more housing. Just to underscore that, we built 6,000 new dwellings. There's 90,000 new residents in the last 10 years. There's just not enough housing. But I think we need to be honest. You know, Thrive 2050, it's gonna hurt some people, and it's gonna hurt their property value. And we need to be fair to those people. Montgomery County residents, I think, are a generous bunch, and they will sacrifice, and they will, you know, do things to help the public good, as long as they're involved and they have a say in that process. So I think we need a more open public process that allows participation, so people know what we're asking them for, and people know that they're working to build a better county, even if it hurts them personally. Thank you.
I guess we're getting a few questions in about affordable housing, and I wanted to follow up a little. I guess we could start with Delegate Carr. I guess one of the questions I'd ask is whether you know, you would consider rent stabilization law in Montgomery County, and you know, if so, why or why not?
Yeah, so I think, you know, we are definitely having some housing challenges. I think we are still recovering from the 2008 financial crisis. That was devastating for a lot of families, and the impact was uneven depending on your income and your ethnicity. The pandemic affected everyone, but the housing crisis was more specific. We're still coming up to speed. We need to do more. Can you repeat the question?
Would you support rent stabilization laws?
Yeah, I think in times of crisis, definitely. During the pandemic, we do need to take emergency action to stabilize rent. Rent control as a general policy. I don't know that is the right policy, as a general rule for Montgomery County. I support the right of local governments to have that option. but I'm not sure that that's the right thing for Montgomery County as a whole.
Mr. Zittrauer.
Yeah, support rent stabilization. I would take nothing off the table in terms of making this area more affordable to live. So if that's rent stabilization, that's rent caps, if that's vacancy taxes, and no idea we shut out. I think we should be listening to all concepts of how to make this place affordable for everyone to live. I also think we need to redefine what we consider affordable housing in this county, because as an NDU renter, my rent is still out of the price range of a lot of people in my line of work. And so what we call affordable still needs to be worked on, and I think rent stabilization could go a long way in that.
Great, so Zitrower Park has rent stabilization, and it works. It works really well. It is, one of the things that we need to make sure people can stay in their homes and have stable homes. There are a number of other things we need, because even under rent stabilization, do you know how much rents are going to be allowed to go up this year? Because of inflation, 7%. Right, that's even under rent stabilization. So we need to even do more to make sure people can stay in their homes, that they have subsidies. Right now in Montgomery County, the self-sufficiency rate for a family of 4 is $91,000. That's to be self-sufficient to live in Montgomery County. So even with rent stabilization, it's not going to be enough to make sure people have stable homes to live in. We need to do other programs around the county, like vouchers and other things. Thank you.
As Delegate Carr said, I think it's great as an emergency option, but long-term rent stabilization is not going to fix this crisis. It's going to disincentivize construction of new housing projects, which we desperately need. This is a supply issue. Long-term, we have to build more housing. The only way we're going to do that is by building more housing. It sounds simple, sounds stupid, but that's the truth. We have to handle this on the supply side. Thank you.
We do need to protect people who are at risk of being displaced, especially along the Purple Line, where they have suffered what will be for a decade of construction. And they should, so limited, target, time-limited rent stabilization can work in very limited circumstances. But we've shown, or studies have shown, that it doesn't work for everybody. In 2019 in San Francisco, they put together a rent stabilization program, and 10% of the people were able to stay in their housing and they were more stable. However, the supply of housing decreased by 15% and drove up rents for everybody else. So if you win the lottery and you get a rent control apartment, you're golden. But for the 95% of the people who will not get that rent control, their rents are going to go up and up and up, and maintenance will be an issue, and we won't have enough housing being built.
We'll start this time with Mr. Zitrower, and our faithful audience out there in Facebook land requests that you in particular speak more forcefully into the mic. So there you have it. So a couple of you have mentioned the Purple Line, and this is a question from the audience, but it says Silver Spring is going through a transition due to the Purple Line. How will you support small businesses that have been impacted by the construction and through the transition, both in the the downtown business district of Silver Spring? And what other county services can you provide to the Silver Spring businesses and residents who've been impacted by the construction?
Yeah, I think we need to take advantage of all of the grants that are possible to help all of the businesses who are impacted by that construction, as well as the residents whose homes will be impacted by that construction, as well as pedestrian safety around that construction. I think this county has a great knack for finding money when it prioritizes certain projects, and I think the Purple Line is a huge priority And so we need to be able to free up the money to help anybody who might be impacted by its destruction.
So in my first term as mayor, I went to a Purple Line meeting, and the Secretary of Transportation was there from Annapolis. And we said, we need money for our small businesses. He said, can't do because that would set a precedent for construction projects. And we said, what? That's ridiculous. These are small businesses. We persisted. And with the help of Delegate Janelle Wilkins, we were able to bring back money to downtown Silver Spring, to Tacoma Park for the small businesses there. So we need to be persistent. The other thing we need to do is, if you look at the things we've done in Tacoma Park on New Hampshire Avenue and University Boulevard, is we got state grants to redo the facades of the businesses there. And instead of empty storefronts, we have murals and wraps so they don't look empty. We have public art there made by local artists. That's what we also need to see in downtown Silver Spring to help our local businesses and to say we are open in downtown Silver Spring.
I'm pretty excited about the Purple Line. I think transportation is something everyone on this stage has talked about. It's a great way to bring in new people, you can go to these new businesses, connects the county, brings new opportunity. I don't want to address a problem that doesn't exist yet. I don't want to take anything off the table either. The Purple Line's not done. It should have been done 4 years ago, but that's not really relevant to the question. We don't know what's going to happen. We shouldn't be planning out, we should be prepared, but to, in the abstract, just say, this is what we need to do for businesses who are going to be harmed. They might be helped. So I don't know. I hope that the Purple Line brings new business. I would be prepared to take steps to help small businesses, especially considering how important small businesses are to employment in the county. But right now, this is all speculative.
Small businesses, they are the heartbeat of our community. That's where most of our jobs are generated. That's where careers are launched and businesses are launched. And we need to be doing much more to support these businesses. The money they got from the state was great, but it wouldn't even cover a couple of weeks' rent. We really need to do much more for these businesses. We too often in Montgomery County are the county of no. Nope, you can't do that. There's a regulation. Nope, you can't do that. We need to become the county of yes. Yes, we've got your back. Yes, we are with you all the way. What can we do to help you? And actually ask the business owners, what do you need? Then find a way to provide it. We need to become the county of yes.
Yeah, so as Mayor Stewart mentioned, the General Assembly did take action to provide some relief to businesses that are affected by the Purple Line construction. So I credit the District 20 team for all their work on that, and I was proud to vote for that as well. And then on the District 16 side, we did have a bill about just construction in general. If you travel around to other cities, New York City, you'll see they're able to build construction things, but they don't shut down, sidewalks and lanes of traffic. They're able to do that better. So I credit Corman from District 16 and also Andrew Friedson for passing some good bills on that regard. And on the small business front, I was proud to pass a bill at the state level and then work with Friedson and Glass to pass a local bill that would relieve all of our small businesses throughout the entire county of these sort of nuisance licensing fees and paperwork that they've been burdened with for a long time to make them more competitive.
Okay, we've got a couple more audience questions, and keep them coming if you feel so moved. And this one, I guess we'll start with Mayor Stewart on this one, and move down this way. Okay, just trying to. Okay, as the new council member, will you support the creation of a fund for immigrants who are in INS detention without criminal carve-outs, similar to programs that exist in Prince George's County and Baltimore City? This would be for legal aid and representation.
Great, yes, absolutely, I definitely would. And in fact, when the Trump administration first began, I actually worked with Delegate Nancy Gallardo and people on the county council to work with the Community Foundation to actually start a fund to provide resources for legal aid for immigrants in our community. Too often, the system is very much stacked against them. So the idea that you have to go through the immigration process without legal representation is really uncalled for in our community. And I think, as my colleague up here said, living in a very wealthy community, there are certain things we can afford, and having people have the right to counsel to get through the immigration process is definitely one of them.
Immigration is generally handled at the national level. As the county, it's our duty to just react. Some of the best people I know are immigrants, documented and undocumented. It's our duty and our responsibility to do what we can to help these people. I can't say exactly how I would react to the proposal because there's just not enough details, but the law is a very complicated subject and people need help navigating it. Both immigrants and residents of the county broadly. So in the abstract, I like the idea. I think it's helpful. I think hardworking people deserve help. Without more specifics, I can't commit to anything.
Yes, we should absolutely make sure that immigrants have access to counsel. It's a complicated system. They need someone guiding them. And I think this is money well spent. We want to make sure that people who are refugees, people who have come here in 1,000 different ways, that they are able to live within the letter of the law. And the only way they can do that is by having a representative there by their side saying, here's what you can do, here's what happens next. And to not give people that counsel is just wrong.
So yeah, my answer is yes. And just as we've observed the disaster in Ukraine and all the refugees that have been created from that situation and flooding into other countries and thankfully welcomed. And then we reflect back on when horrific things happen to people in other countries, but they don't, but they maybe have different skin color. We treat them differently. I think we need to be compassionate to all immigrants, all refugees, no matter what what the color of their skin. So absolutely yes.
Yeah, I've personally known too many friends, coworkers, etc., who've tried to navigate the ridiculous immigration system without any help. None of them would see them really struggle to say yes. They need help, legal aid, provided by the county if necessary, because it's a confusing, insane system, and these people need to be valued as human beings worthy of dignity and respect and able to live here.
Okay, sticking with some audience questions here. This is, we'll begin with Mr. Murtha. This is the inevitable cell tower question. And well, it's a multi-part question, so bear with me here. Do you support a pause and then a repeal of the zoning text amendment that allows cell towers to be placed within 30 feet of homes and even closer with a conditional hearing? Would you convene a stakeholder group to craft a zoning amendment that takes into consideration residents' views? So, cell tower.
I've said this earlier, I think it's always important to consider residents' views. It's your community. This county belongs to the people. They want to know what's going on, what's happening near them. You know, they should have a say in what gets built. Now, this type of infrastructure is important. You know, having access to communications is a key in the modern world. That's just the reality of it. Having good cell phone service seems to be pretty consistent around the county. I want to help people. I want the county to respond to their wants and needs, and I want you to live in a county that feels like what you want it to be. So taking citizens' input is absolutely critical. Thank you.
Of course, we absolutely need public input, but I think the cell tower, the 5G cell towers did have a lot of public input. I think there was a lot of opportunity for both sides to have their say, and not everyone got what they wanted. But that doesn't mean you get to have more say and open it up again. Sometimes you don't win. And I think we need to push forward. We need to be on the cutting edge of technology, because that's what's going to bring us the exciting jobs. That's what's going to bring us quantum computing and all sorts of stuff I don't even understand, but I know we want our county.
Yeah, so I would be happy to take another look at that. That's actually my professional background. I worked in the telecom industry for 20 years and have an engineering degree. So what I would want to do is look for best practices. What are other jurisdictions doing? Is there a jurisdiction that has struck a better balance than we have? 30 feet from residents, as I look at the Pepco poles outside my window, seems a little close. My understanding maybe is that the city of Gaithersburg has come up with a better ordinance that better balances the needs of citizens. So yes, happy to relook at that decision and see if we can do better.
I think it's one thing to solicit input from the community, which I'm obviously in favor of, and know that there are more effective ways to do that than what we are doing currently. But it's another thing entirely to let a handful of homeowners decide the course of progress for an entire county. And so I think there has to be a clear line drawn when the county has to act and help us maintain some sort of competitive advantage with telecommunications infrastructure, because without it, we fall way behind in terms of jobs, pretty much every other aspect of life.
Thank you. So before the ZTA at the county level in Tacoma Park, we actually worked with a number of residents and wrote a cell tower ordinance. And it was hard work. It's a complicated issue, but I'm very proud of the work that we did in Tacoma Park, and I wish the county council had taken more of our advice, because it seems to be working for us in Tacoma Park. Thank you.
I apologize if this question is too overly broad, but we've been talking about, programs and kind of, wish list for the county. And, one of the ongoing questions is how to pay for everything. And part of that, the answer to that question comes with the business climate here and what that business climate looks like. So I guess starting with Ms. Ginsburg, talk about business development. What's your vision for bringing more economic development to Montgomery County?
So as I had mentioned, there are 14,000 jobs that should be here in Montgomery County that went to other places in the DMV. That's $12 billion of GDP we don't get to tax. I don't want to pay more. I don't want you to pay more. I want to expand the tax base so there's more people, more entities paying into the system. We need to bring those jobs back. We can do that by making sure that our regulatory process is fair and keeps us safe and keeps the environment safe, but also moves at a pace that they move across the river. We need to better support our small businesses, because they are who are job generators. They generate our jobs. We also need to make sure we have enough housing for employees. We need to make sure we have schools that are the best in the region. And when we do all of this and we create great smart growth communities where people can live, work, and play and have a high quality of life, we will attract the investment we need in the county.
The question was, what's your vision for bringing more economic development to Montgomery County?
Yeah, so I think the role of the government is really to invest in infrastructure. So invest in good schools, invest in good parks, invest in public safety, roads, so that we can attract people who want to live here, people who want to do business here. We want our county to be a place that is a great place to live, no matter how, whether you're young or you're old, or starting a business, retiring. So I think that's the way that we need to look at it. As I mentioned before, I did pass a bill and work with the county council to relieve some a burden on small business in Montgomery County. I think that we can do more to streamline. I understand the Elridge administration is doing a lot to revamp the permitting process, bringing up a new system online, and I expect that will bear some fruit.
I think we need to look at all of our regulations in our county that have to do with opening and operating a business and see which ones are well-intentioned but completely nonsense. For example, like my bosses to open up a restaurant brewery had to put up their home as collateral and then had to pay a recordation fee for the privilege of putting their home up as collateral. That's a regulation that, while maybe well-intentioned, just does not make sense. We require a licensed architect to do retail renovations where there's no architecture involved and no structural work going on at all. This is bogging down potential small business owners and driving them away from our county, where we should be investing in our county, investing in our small businesses, and making it easier to own and operate.
Great. So I think there's three prongs we need to work on. One, the Montgomery County Economic Development Corp. Basically does marketing, and we need to bring economic development back into the county government to really attract industry to the county. The second thing is we need to emphasize our small businesses. 90% of our businesses in the county have 50 or less employees. I did a Zoom event a couple of weeks ago with women entrepreneurs, and they said a couple of things. The permitting, as a number of people have mentioned, licensing is a nightmare. We have one small business navigator in the county for all our small businesses. Capital, especially for Black and brown businesses and women, they need access to capital. Putting stuff on a website isn't enough. And then the last thing is really having the housing and the transportation, because we want people to live here and to work here, and they're not going to do that unless we have affordable housing and good transportation.
The prosperity of this county, the nice social services that are provided, depend on us having a thriving economy. We need good jobs. We need places for employees to live. We need to attract businesses. And the reality is right now, as Mr. Zittrauer said, it's hard to start a business. People in Montgomery County are incredibly creative. They're incredibly smart. They're incredibly well educated. We need to make sure that we are empowering them, not stopping them. Part of that looks like removing regulations. Part of that looks like investing in education and housing. And part of that looks like, got the third point. So yeah, the jobs, bringing jobs to this county, making sure that this is a thriving economy, we can afford education and housing. That's absolutely critical.
Let's do an education question since we're in a school. And the school, this lunchroom, I guess, doesn't look like it's really been updated for probably 40 years or thereabouts. So obviously council members don't have a lot of impact over school policy per se, but they do get to vote on the education budget. So how will you ensure that our school facilities will get the funding that they need? And do you have ideas for raising revenue to be able to afford more capital projects in schools? And I guess we begin with you, Delegate Carr.
So yeah, so I think as you said, Josh, the county council doesn't have direct control over the schools. They're independent, but we do have a say over policies and over the budget. So one of the things I did as a delegate was to pass a law to require our school system to publish all of their spending. Every vendor that they spend $25,000 or more on is now on a website viewable by the public. I think that's an incentive for them to spend smarter. And I think on capital projects, they can maybe be smarter about how they spend their dollars. They, I think, kind of have a bias and an obsession towards building these mega schools, which I don't think is necessarily economically smart. I think we need to look more at adaptive reuse instead of always tearing down every building and building it up again from scratch. And I think we can leverage the General Assembly and the state to get more dollars to pay for our education needs.
The easiest part of this one to answer is how do we raise the money for capital improvement? And it's going to keep going back to housing, because the more people who are able to afford to live here, the bigger your tax base is. If we have more people paying into our tax system, we're going to be able to find money for capital improvements for our schools. And education is going to need to be a priority in anybody. Not just teacher pay, but definitely teacher pay. Our schools need to be updated. If we're having, we're returning back to in-person classes without proper ventilation, that is a construction issue, and that needs to adequately be addressed. So the money can be found if more people can afford to live and pay taxes.
Great, thank you. So on capital projects, I definitely think we should be looking at the state funding more. We have a structural surplus, remarkable in our state, and I think we should be getting more funding through that for our capital projects. In addition, we need to look at other areas of revenue. We need more people to live here, but we also need to build a commercial base. Because if we're going to pay for not just our school projects, but also other things to live in the county, we need to attract more businesses here and increase our commercial tax base as well. In addition, this year, actually, the Assembly passed a bill to look at the income tax and allow Montgomery County to actually no longer just do a flat income tax, but bracket it out more. It's still capped. But that's also another way. When you look at the disparities and the wealth gap that has taken place, particularly under COVID, it has grown even more in Montgomery County, and we need to do something about that. And that's another area where we can raise revenue.
Schools are probably the most important thing this county does. In the long term, that's going to determine the success of our people. It's nearly half of our budget, more than half if we include Montgomery College. It's billions of dollars. As Delegate Carr said, throwing money onto the problem is not always the solution. We need to make sure we're using our money efficiently. We're building projects that last, that we're planning long term. I'm going to disagree with some of my colleagues. Bringing more people into the county will raise the tax revenue, but that also brings in new people. And that's not going to solve the problem. If we determine that money is needed to solve this problem and that mere efficiency is not going to get us there, then we're going to have to look to growing our commercial base and raising revenue through other means. Thank you.
As many people have said, we very much need to increase our tax base. We need all sorts of entities paying into it. We need more commercial entities. We need innovative tech firms coming to Montgomery County and adding to our tax base. But we also need to make sure the council uses its bully pulpit. It's true, they don't have a lot of authority. Essentially, the school funding is 1 or 2 line items on a budget. They don't have legal authority, but they have a bully pulpit. And I'm not sure that our current council is using it as much as they should. In January, it was a mess. I don't think there's anyone here who would disagree that going back to school in January was a mess. And there was a lot of pointing fingers at people, but not a lot of taking responsibility for the problem. And I think that the council, the county executive, and the school system need to make sure they are working together to make sure our kids have exactly what they need, to make sure our teachers are supported, and to make sure we're spending money in the classrooms, not in the administrative building.
All right, we'll go, we've been getting some questions, not just from the physical audience here, but from folks watching online and submitting questions via chat. So we'll go with a couple more audience questions. I think we should do probably a broader policing question after this, but we can start with this one. We'll start with Mr. Zittrauer. This one is pretext traffic stops result in arrests that disproportionately affect Black and brown residents. Do you support eliminating traffic stops for minor offenses?
Yes, probably don't even get to that one, but yes, pretextual stops are a huge issue, and I don't think they're going to get eliminated through sensitivity trainings. I don't think we're going to get rid of racial bias in policing through a few classes. I think if we can automate as much as possible and take the human factor out of the equation, we will see a little more equitable policing. I would try to curb the number of stops, period. So eliminating pretextual stops is a huge step in the right direction.
Absolutely, and we're doing it now in Tacoma Park. In 2018, we actually stopped doing discretionary police traffic stops, and we've decreased the number of traffic stops by 80%. And what we're doing is targeted traffic enforcement and stops. And so we're looking at areas where we know somebody, blows through that stop sign, or there should be a stop sign there, but SHA won't let us put it there. And that's where we put our police officers. The other thing we did was revamp our evaluation system. So it's no longer based on the number of tickets you write, but it's based on how you do public safety and build a better community. And so through those things, we've reduced the traffic stops, and also we've seen a decrease in collisions over the same period of time. We can do this in Montgomery County.
I think Mayor Stewart has the right approach. Taking traffic stops off the table completely removes a very useful tool for public safety. I mean, a car driving through a school zone is a real threat to children. We need to be careful, but we need to build a police force that respects all people, all races, all ethnicities. We need to make sure that the rule of law is maintained. And the rule of law depends on you knowing what laws are being enforced. If you can be pulled over for minor things that really we're all doing, tail light out, getting too close to the curb, then the rule of law is not being protected.
Yes, we have the technology. We should make use of that technology. And so we can still keep our streets safe, because it's really important that we keep our streets safe. Too many pedestrians, too many bicyclists, they're getting hit by cars or by drivers who are driving the cars, and they're dying, they're getting hurt, and we are seeing record number of pedestrian and cyclist injuries. So yes, let's use our technology to make the stops fair, but let's also make sure we are getting the speeders, we're getting drunk drivers, we're getting the drag racers off our streets.
Yeah, so I'm really proud of the work of the General Assembly on these policing issues. We passed the toughest police reform bill in the nation. We've done a lot to reduce traffic stops. I have one of my own bills. David Moon has done some amazing work. So yeah, we do need to minimize unnecessary encounters with police, and I think the county really does need to partner closely with the state, because there's more that needs to be done at the state level. With Craig Bryce leaving and Tom Hucker having 4 years at most, I think it's important to have someone like me who does have that, decade and a half of General Assembly experience, so that the county council can partner closely with the state to do even more to change the state laws.
I guess we'll start with Mayor Stewart. If feel like public safety is an issue that oddly doesn't often get discussed to the degree maybe that it should in Montgomery County. And I guess, again, I apologize, it's sort of a broad question, but do we need to reimagine public safety in the county, and what would that look like?
Just do it in a minute. Okay, great. So, yeah, public safety. So I would say that, you know, being the mayor of a city has some great things about it and some really difficult things. I've been the mayor of a city where we've had shootings and residents have died, and that was the case on Friday night. You know, gun violence has increased across the country. And when it hits you at home, and then the next day you're talking to a family who's lost a son, or, you know, kids who heard those gunshots, it really hits home. There are a lot of short-term things we need to do, but long-term, we do need to reimagine public safety, because we're not going to police ourselves out of this. We need national gun laws, and we need to do better on mental health issues. We need to take the mental health work out of the police hands and really do that. And that's work I'm actually doing in Tacoma Park now, partnering with our police department and talking to Adventist Healthcare. We need to take mental health out of policing.
Policing is a hard job. I think we've seen crime in the county has skyrocketed over the last 2 years. But, you know, we're still below national levels. And part of why Montgomery County, part of why we talk about this so little, is it's traditionally been a very safe place, a place where you can raise a family. Do we need to reimagine it? No, but I think we need to reprioritize some things. There are certainly times when you need police. But there are also times when you need mental health experts and other social services. Making sure those services are adequately funded and making sure that the police have the resources they need, but also are used on situations where they're really needed, not on arbitrary situations, is the path forward.
Public safety is one of government's most serious responsibilities. We need to put community policing and really put the community back in community policing. Right now, too many of our first responders and police officers, they don't live here. This is a job. And when you have this is only where you work, it automatically sets up a us versus them. But when you have your police and your first responders living in your community, this becomes their community. And there's trust between residents and police, and that's good for public safety. We also need to make sure, as others have noted, that when there's a mental health crisis, we need a mental health professional dealing with it. Now, maybe there's police as a backup, but we need to make sure that mental health professionals are dealing with mental health crises. And we also need to make sure we are paying our first responders the best we can pay, because we want only the best and brightest, and we want to train them well.
Yeah, so I agree with Mr. Murtha and Ms. Ginsburg on the idea of mental health and not burdening our police officers with tasks that are better done by mental health professionals. So I think we need to implement. You know, I was proud as a member of the General Assembly to work with Speaker Jones, David Moon, Will Smith to pass the toughest police reform law in the nation, and we need to implement it. That's taking time. I know the County Council is implementing parts of that right now. And you can't manage what you don't measure. So we need to do a better job of measuring and gathering data on traffic stops. Montgomery County hasn't always done a good job of meeting their commitments to measure race-based traffic stops and report those. So we can implement.
Yes, to reimagining public safety, I think we need to discard the false notion that more police on the streets equals more public safety. I think that doesn't stand to any scrutiny. I would like to see, whenever you want to rebrand the SRO program, I would like to see that discarded. I think that's, you know, the cops in schools, it's a bad match. I would like to see more focus on mental health services in schools and outside of schools, obviously. decriminalization of addiction, poverty, the end of cash bail. We need a huge overhaul of what we consider public safety and our judicial and policing system.
Another viewer question. Start with Mr. Murtha. Does the unelected planning board have too much power? And if so, what changes would you propose to make the planning board more responsive to voters?
Yeah, they probably have too much power. The planning board is, well, zoning generally is probably what is going to affect the shape of the county in the long term. Zoning's crafting the county of the future. I mean, we talked earlier about Thrive 2050. This is what gets people upset. It might be time to start looking at electing some of those members, or changing the way that that process is done, or requiring certain zoning restrictions on, I'm sorry, it's confusing language. Requiring districts for members, or making sure that someone is representing the area that they are zoning. Now, as I said earlier, you will have to sacrifice for the greater good of the county. Sometimes you're not going to get everything you want, but making sure that public officials are accountable, that's government 101.
I don't think we should have an elected planning board. The planning board just plans. They don't implement. That's what the council does. So it's not as if the planning board's putting out edicts and we're just stepping in line. The council has to discuss and approve anything the planning board does. And we want people who are planners, who this is what they do for a living, planning our county. This is what they're experts in, and I firmly believe we need to trust the experts because they know what they're doing. And if they don't know what they're doing, they shouldn't be in our county. They shouldn't be our planning board experts. I also want to say, I know you had mentioned about sacrifices. I think many of these zoning amendments that people are afraid of, they're not going to hurt neighborhoods. They're not going to hurt property values. They're actually going to increase property values. It's just a fear, not a rational, not rational thought, but it's fear-based, and we need to make sure we're using our brains, not our hearts, to make these decisions.
So I think our planning process could be improved. So when a project is coming through the pipeline, before it goes to the planning board, it goes to this other vetting process called the DRC, Development Review Committee. And that process was very opaque, and it was not operating in compliance with the Open Meetings Compliance Board. So I was involved in getting that changed. So now that process is very much more transparent. And the planning board, their parent agency is called Park and Planning. They were found to have been in violation of the state law. State law says they have to have lobbying and ethics rules that are as strict as the state, and they didn't. And it's been that way for a lot of years. Thanks to some observant citizens, that got changed, and I actually passed a law in this session in General Assembly to try to make sure something like that doesn't happen again.
I think we need to do a better job at soliciting feedback from residents, but I'm in full agreement with what Amy said. We're at the planning board has power at all. You know, it is up to the county council to approve anything that comes from them. So I don't know that they would have too much power. I just know that when we are soliciting feedback from residents, we can do a better job of going to where people are and meeting them where they are, as opposed to expecting them to show up at a certain time, at a certain place for a meeting. So we can definitely solicit feedback better and more effectively. But no, I would not say that the planning board has too much power.
Great. Well, just to build on that, I think that, you know, one of the things that with putting in place the racial equity work that the county is doing, it gives us a great opportunity to really think about how we're doing public engagement right now. And there's a spectrum of public engagement. And I think the problem has been, and I know we struggle with this in the city, is setting expectations and really doing public engagement. There's a spectrum. Sometimes you just get input. right? You just want to say, what do you think about this? And then the other end of the spectrum is collaboration, when we're rolling up our sleeves and working together to solve a problem or to create something together. And we don't do a good job of really defining those things and setting the right expectations. And I think we have a chance in the county with our racial equity work to do this better and to set expectations for people and really bring people together. Sometimes when we just need input, and sometimes when we want to roll up our sleeves and really collaborate and work on a project together.
Mayor Stewart actually anticipated my next question, which is about racial equity. We'll start with Ms. Ginsburg. For the past 2+ years, Montgomery County has had a racial equity and social justice policy in place, and the county now has a chief equity officer. How is that policy working in your view, and how can it be strengthened? Why do so many people of color in Montgomery County continue to feel the deck is stacked against them?
We need to do much more to address the systemic equity issues that are baked into our system. We need to make sure that everyone has a seat at the table and that their voices are heard, no matter the color of their skin, where they pray, their gender, their sex. We need to make sure everyone gets a seat at the table. But we continue to have a great problem of growing economic, gosh, I'm blanking on words here, where our incomes are divergent, where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And we need to address that. We need to make sure we're bringing jobs to the county so everyone can get a good job that pays well. We need to make sure that we're building homes so people can start building family wealth. And we need to make sure that always people from every walk of life, they're not only invited to the table, but we make sure they're there and we make sure we're listening to them.
Yeah, so it's been a really interesting time in history this last few years. You know, the generation before me had Emmett Till, which kind of woke them up to think about these issues, and we had George Floyd. So it's really been so heartening to see so many people pay attention to these issues and to really reawaken the desire to fix some longstanding problem. So I applaud the County Council, Councilmember Navarro, for advancing this, racial justice and equity process. And I think we just need to implement that, evaluate it, refine it. I think it does need to be expanded to some additional areas. There are transportation projects that I don't think are looked at through that lens, like the Summit Avenue extension in Kensington. And yeah, I think a lot of folks do feel like the deck is stacked against them. We have work to do.
You're never going to hear me say that we're doing enough to address racial equity and justice, because that is a far-reaching goal. And I believe that a lot of our residents who feel that the deck is stacked against them, as you said, are probably right. In our society, it's a grim reality. And I think when we talk about community engagement and engaging communities of color, we have to be in those communities to adequately hear them and address needs and concerns. That's not just waiting for someone to show up at a county council hearing to provide testimony. That's going out into the community, being outside and being with the people. And I think we can always do a better job without reaching out to
To answer the question, I think having the chief equity officer, Tiffany Ward, in the county is excellent in moving this forward. And one of the things we first need to do is normalize conversations around race, because they can be difficult to have. But really centering race and talking about how in our county, in our country, race predicts outcomes. It does. And how are we going to address that in our county? Let's just take schools, for an example. The Black and Brown Coalition has done a lot of work on this. And when you look at the, what we need to get in our schools, where we need experienced teachers and administrators in those schools that, you know, so-called struggling schools. We need that. Those are the types of things we need to look at, and how do we actually target our resources? We can do the same thing with housing and looking at the disparities we have in home ownership across the county, and how do we target down payment assistance programs to Black and brown families? That's the type of programs we need.
All my colleagues have brought up some really good points, but I'd like to touch on something else. There is a real and persistent danger of the government really screwing up the situation. I've read some very good books in the last 2 years, The New Jim Crow, The Color of Law. It's very possible to screw this whole thing up and create new segregation across the country. We have to be careful. We have to be aware of the dangers, and we have to take responsibility for our past actions. Now, fixing the problem is a lot of what we've already talked about. It's making sure people have homes, good homes. It's making sure people can get educated. And more than anything, it's making sure people have careers and jobs that can move them into the middle class, to build wealth and to educate the next generation of activists and citizens. Thank you.
So we have time for one more question, and we're not going to be asking for traditional closing statements, but a question that a member of the audience submitted can kind of almost serve as a closing statement. So I guess we begin with Delegate Carr. We'll go back that way again. And it's a simple enough question, or two questions really. What makes you stand out from the other candidates? Why you? So Delegate Carr.
Yeah, thank you. So a county council member, it's a legislative job. You're legislating, you write laws, and that's what I've done for the last 20 years. I've been a legislator for 15 years at the state level and for 5 years at the local level. It takes time to get skilled at being a legislator, and I got, better at it every year that I was there in Annapolis. So I'm proud of the 29 bills I just passed in the last 4 years, 5 years alone. So, we need people who have, a deep understanding of our General Assembly and can walk into the Speaker's office with a decade and a half experience. We're losing Craig Rice, and, Tom Hucker's here for only a few more years at best. So we really do need someone like me with that kind of background and track record and experience.
What makes me stand out would be my experience as someone who is without a lot of means and has had to struggle and understands the struggle of a lot of our residents. I'm an NPU renter. I am a tipped wage worker. I am a person who has tried to afford to live in this area and been barely able to many times. So I believe that to be a fresh perspective on the county council, to really be able to speak to struggles that a lot of the folks who have represented us haven't felt that recently.
Thank you. Experience, dedication, and knowledge. I've been the mayor in Tacoma Park since 2015, and it's the best job and the hardest job I've ever had. We have, in Montgomery County, some of the smartest and most amazing people that you get to work with. And I've gotten to do that in Tacoma Park, and I'd like to take that to the county level. I've also worked regionally and have the respect of my colleagues from Virginia, Prince George's, and other places in Montgomery County that they elected me to be the vice chair of the COG board. I've worked across the country. I'm on the steering committee for the Mayor's Innovation Project, which is a national project that looks at how we can put in place progressive programs at the local level. We need leadership right now on our county council. We're going to have an 11-member county council, and the majority of members, even if all the incumbents win, are going to be brand new. We need somebody who knows local government and how it works to move forward.
Well, I would say you've got 5 excellent candidates here. Everybody on this stage has really impressed me. And, you know, I think there's a real convergence on values. We all agree on the problems facing the county. We've talked about them, the jobs, the housing, the public safety, and our schools. The reality is nobody knows what the future is going to hold. And what you have, well, ultimately it's up to the voters to decide what a qualified candidate is. I would look for someone who is smart, who you can trust, and who looks to solve problems. And I think it's in that last area where I would succeed. I come at problems from a different way. I consider alternatives. I try and avoid cognitive biases, and I try and produce results. Thank you.
I've had a 40-year career running nonprofits. And when you're running a nonprofit, you're helping the most vulnerable people in our community. And you're doing it on a shoestring. I know how to stretch a dollar, and I know how to stretch it really far. Because as a nonprofit leader, you only have limited resources, but you have huge tasks. I want to make sure that we're bringing all sorts of people together from all walks of life, from all sectors. And that's what you do as a nonprofit leader. You bring together the community and businesses, government, and you get things done. I'm supposed to be retired now, but when they had this redistricting, people asked me to run. And the only reason I'm running is to get stuff done. I don't have any ambitions. I'm only running because I want to make the county that I grew up in, the county where I raised my family, the best place it can be. I want to make it a place where my children and my grandchildren want to live here and can live here.
First, a round of applause for the man with the toughest job of the night, Mark Warner, most thankless job. And then really just a round of applause for these candidates. It takes a lot to put yourself out there. So, you know, well done. So thank you.
Well, first I'd like to start by thanking Josh Kurtz, Pamela and Eleanor, Maryland Matters, and the entire evening. I never addressed Mayor Kate Stewart, because I consider her more of a friend. Johnny Kate plus, I'll forget that part. And we had a number of elected officials here. At-large candidates, Lorianne Sales, Scott Goldberg, Jill Orman-Thaus, Tom Hucker's office, clerk of the court candidates, Alan Bowser, Karen Bushnell, candidate for sheriff. And I'm glad he's gone because I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Max. I'll just go with Max. U-E. I live in Maxwell. District 5 candidate, Daniel Corona. And from John McCarthy's office, Ken Smondrowski. And let me thank my executive board members. I hope I haven't omitted any candidates or any other elected officials. Looks like I haven't. But I'd like to thank Vice President Phil Ackerman, Treasurer Stephen Schiavone, and audio visual, Secretary Donna Graham Harris, and committee members Emily Ackerman, Alan Bowser, Toba Hausner, Carla Neighbors, my favorite, Beth Sinovarsky, Joy West, and all the members of the Greater Silver Spring Democratic Club. And as always, we welcome new members and always looking for new members. And you can join and find membership information on gssdclub@gmail.com. Also, last but not least, form for District 5 candidates. next Monday, May 2nd, 7 p.m. at Riderwood Encore Theater. Scott Snyder's here for that. And it will be sponsored by Riderwood Democratic Club, Progressive Neighbors. D5 starts at Four Corners. It goes up to Riderwood over to Leisure World. So with that, that concludes our program. I thank you all for coming out. And it looks like we lost a few people. It's way past my bedtime because I started at 4 a.m. Oh, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Mark Woodard, our previous greatest of the Free Democratic president, and a great town. So thank you. Be safe. Thank you.